Hello. So my name is Katie Johnstone. For the past year, I've been a bit more than a year, I've been running the CFS Medical Education Campaign. And the campaign has accomplished a little bit, not much, a little bit. It's the Christmas period. For some, it's a time of sort of reflecting over the year and thinking about where to go forward in the new year. So I want to do a little video talking about that. And I've spent this community, the ME community, has so many problems. I want to talk about some of them, some of the problems as I see it. There are so many. I want to specifically talk about the relationship and the interaction between the ME community and the medical world. It's hard to know where to start. So the strange thing about ME is we do seem to have a lot of politicians who understand our problems, or partly understand them, and want to help. And it's really strange how little that does help. It's really strange how little having MPs on your side helps. It's so complicated. I feel like the UK medical system. So who I am, my background, I grew up in Canada and I have dual nationality. I'm Canadian and British. So I do see myself as British, but I didn't grow up here. That kind of gives me a unique perspective. Okay, so what do I think about the UK's medical system? It's kind of its own thing. It seems to be unaccountable. Medical leaders just seem to be leaders. They seem to be like kings in castles. You cannot question them, you cannot approach them, you cannot ask them why they do the things they do. They wield power in a way that seems to me to be very democratic. So I'm going to talk about particular institutions and what I've learned about those institutions. Okay, so this video is really my thoughts on UK medical institutions. Here we go. NICE, the National Institute of Health and Care Excellence. They made the 2007 guidelines on what was then called chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis, CFS-ME. The 2007 guidelines were terrible. They were kind of evidence-based, but only if you turn your head and squint. The research behind those guidelines was bad, and a lot of people were harmed by them. A lot of people were really very badly harmed, and that's a history that has not been acknowledged. On the other hand, NICE, starting in 2016, they did a very, very thorough review of all the evidence for treatments for ME/CFS. They produced a new guideline in 2021. That guideline is pretty damn good. It's a vast improvement on the previous one. It's pretty good, not perfect, but I hope I'm not wrong, I think that in general, I can say that the ME community is happy with the 2021 NICE guideline. Not that there are no criticisms to be made, and particularly I don't think it really does enough to help those with severe ME/CFS. But the 2021 NICE guideline is really good for us, or at least it doesn't actively advocate treatments that are harmful and likely to make us even sicker. So there's that. NICE, they're okay, but they really seem to be sort of like, we've done the guideline, that's it, we're done now. It's interesting to me, and I find it odd that NICE made a guideline, spent 4 or 5 years creating it, published it on their website, and didn't tell any doctors. The NICE guideline has not been implemented. The one thing they have done is they've changed the NHS clinics. They used to give CBT and GET. They've changed that, so now you get an occupational therapist who tells you pacing. And those OTs do their best, but it's very obvious that they're not well trained and not well supported to help patients. Okay, so NICE finally produced a pretty good guideline, but didn't tell anyone, and doctors aren't aware of it. It's really, really weird that they would produce this guideline which completely, utterly contradicts and reverses the previous view on how to treat this illness, and they didn't bother to tell any doctors. So there's a lot of doctors out there still telling patients with ME to exercise. That is still happening. There's also a lot of doctors who know better. They know they're not supposed to tell us to exercise, but they do not know why. They don't know why. They don't understand what post-exertional malaise is, and they don't understand how serious this illness is. And the way doctors are treating people with ME/CFS in 2023, it is better than it was 5 years ago, but that's a very low bar. It's still atrocious. It's still horrific. It's still honestly abusive. Because when you have a very, very serious illness and you go and talk to a doctor who believes that you have a very minor illness, which might not even be an illness at all, then they end up behaving in a way which is in fact abusive. Okay, that's doctors. I was talking about NICE. And really, I was just saying it's weird that they completely reversed the recommended treatments for ME/CFS, but didn't tell anyone. So let's go to the NHS. Does the NHS hate people with ME? It really seems like they do. It really does seem that they are violently prejudiced against us. It seems like more than just not trying or not noticing. It seems like more than that. It seems like they actually do actively want to hurt us. And one example of this is their website. I mean, people with their website says things about ME that are simply untrue and very out of date and not evidence-based. And it's very, very harmful to patients because doctors are looking at that crap website and believing it because it's the NHS. People's families, the families of people with ME, are looking at that website and thinking, well, you're not really sick because the NHS website says you're not that sick and you should be able to get better with a bit of CBT. So this website is contributing to tremendous suffering. It is just a website, but it's causing tremendous suffering, and they've been told and told and told and told and told. It's not like they haven't been told. And it's not that hard to update a website. They're pretending that it's rocket science. They're pretending that updating their website is like building a rocket ship and flying it to Mars. It's a freaking website. If they wanted to stop hurting us, they could. They are choosing as an institution to keep hurting us. Now, the website is a pretty small example. I think maybe I'll leave the NHS there for now. I'll just say that institutionally, and this is not a criticism of individual clinicians, this is more towards those who make decisions at high levels or simply to institutional structures, which may not be determined by a human being, but which may simply be the way that things are. The NHS, institutionally and in terms of those in power, it's not neutral towards us. It's actively harming us, making us sicker, abusing us. I don't know what to do about that because they don't listen to anything we say, but that is our situation. And that's dire. Individual doctors, when you have ME, it really, really, really feels like doctors hate you. And sometimes they do. I think maybe 5% of them do, because there is a prejudice out there that people with ME are liars and they're malingerers and they're manipulative and they waste doctors' time. I think a small proportion of doctors do actually hate us, but I think most of them don't. I think most of the doctors who are hurting us are doing it out of literal ignorance. It's not malicious. It simply is ignorance. And they'd be horrified if they knew the truth. And they're kind of trusting medical institutions to teach them and guide them to practice medicine properly. They're trusting that the stuff they were taught in medical school is true. And they're trusting that if there was some update they needed to their knowledge in order to be good doctors, then the NHS would provide that. There would be a mandatory CPD module. And they're not getting that. So in a way, the doctors who are good doctors, who want to help their patients and who want to do what a good doctor should do, they are being failed by institutions. They were failed by their medical schools. They are now being failed by the NHS. One thing that interests me that I keep seeing is and I do think this is especially the younger doctors. It does sometimes seem that when they learn about ME/CFS, when they start to learning the scientific, the research, the clinical knowledge that is out there, on PubMed in the scientific domain, when they start learning about that, they get really interested and they really, really want to help. And I do think if only we could reach them, most doctors, the ones that aren't burned out and don't hate us, would be incredible allies to the ME community, because that's literally what they want to do with their lives. They've chosen to spend their lives helping people. But they just don't know. And they're interested. So this is a little side note, but I recently wrote a little opinion piece for the British Medical Journal. It was about ME/CFS, and it was specifically saying that people had, before 2021, gone to NHS clinics and been given the worst possible medical advice and harmed, that some people became permanently more sick, that this was a horrific thing that happened that should be acknowledged at the very least. And I got kind of the nicest rejection letter. The editor who wrote to me said, the topic matter was really important, but it wasn't written in the right format for them. And she even copy pasted from their website some instructions on how to write things in the right format to try to help me going forward. So what I learned from that is there is an appetite. Like that editor, she rejected me, but I think there was an appetite there. I think if you want to get things published as an opinion article in the medical world, things that are read by doctors, it's really, really hard to get anything read by doctors that isn't written by doctors. I think going forward, if there's someone out there who knows exactly how to write things for those publications, I think they are very, very specific about their style and their format and what kind of article they want. And I actually tried pretty hard to follow their format, but I think maybe I'm not managing to do that on their own. And I would love it if there's someone out there, maybe a doctor or someone medical or someone who's somehow in that world, who could help me, not with the content. I've got plenty of stories to tell, but with the style, the formatting, the way you write it. I think as a community, maybe working together and trying to get articles published in publications that doctors read would be really valuable. I think there are a lot of people, doctors and other medical people, who would be our allies if they just had the information, and it's really difficult just getting that information to them. So that's one thing. But I was talking about medical institutions. I talked about NICE. I talked a little bit about the NHS. I mean, you could talk about the NHS all day. I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to talk for 10 hours. Okay, so what other institutions are there out there? Let's just go to the nasty part. Let's talk about the GMC, the General Medical Council. For one thing, they say they're responsible for medical education. But when you go to them and say, actually, medical education is inadequate, and I've got proof, they say, oh, that's not really our job. They don't take any responsibility at all for medical education. They say they do. But what they really mean by that is literally just that when the people at medical schools are going to write a test, the GMC wants to see a summary of how they wrote the test. They don't even want to see the actual test. They just want some sort of a plan to show how the test. Anyway, the GMC is, for all intents and purposes, the GMC is claiming to have responsibility for medical education, but they don't. as far as I can tell, and to the best of my understanding, there is some bureaucracy that happens, but the amount of real stuff that happens is zero. The GMC does nothing for medical education in actual fact. So I've talked about the GMC in terms of medical education. The other way I've been thinking about the GMC was, well, patients who with ME are being very, very commonly, all the time, over and over and over, treated in a way which is malpractice, which is abuse, and which violates the NICE guidelines. And the doctors who do this seem to have no repercussions whatsoever. And pretty early, when I started looking into these things, I thought maybe we need a campaign where we inform people with ME that you can and should report a doctor who gives you incorrect and harmful advice or treatment to the GMC. So a couple of things. One thing is that all the other ways you can complain about doctors, you can complain to your GP surgery, you can do a formal complaint. If you're at a hospital, they have a PALS system. From what I've read, it's not that it's useless. I've used those things. I've heard other people use those things. It's not that it's completely useless, but it's largely useless. I think if you're using those tools to try to get change, I think 5% of the time it might be useful, but the other 95% of the time, its real purpose is to fob off the patient who's complaining, to make it seem that something's being done. It seems to be largely an empty and meaningless bureaucratic procedure. The only kind of complaint against a doctor that matters is a complaint to the GMC. And it's weird for patients to think about this, right? Normally a GMC complaint is made about a doctor by another doctor. I don't even know if we can complain to the GMC about doctors who hurt us. When I was looking into this, I looked into the GMC more and more and more, and I did learn some things about the GMC that are disturbing. I learned that when doctors are referred to the GMC, when the GMC is investigating a doctor, it's so extreme that doctors sometimes contemplate ending their lives. Some even actually do it. I've learned that the GMC is not trusted by doctors. They're not seen as being fair. In fact, they're seen as being racist. And when there's one or two stories about the GMC doing something that treats people different because of their race, the first one or two stories, I thought maybe that's not a real thing. But then there were more stories that came up as I was doing my research, and I thought, okay, this has to be real. It seems that the GMC is untrustworthy and maybe abusive towards doctors. So that made me think, wow, that I don't want to ally with that institution. But on the other hand, what else have we got? So I'm stuck, basically. I don't know what to do. Okay, so moving on. What do I think about medical schools? Most of them are doing a pretty terrible job of teaching MECFS. Let's back up. What do we know about what they're doing? Very little, because they're opaque. They do not tell you what they're doing. One thing I'm thinking of maybe doing is sending out FOI requests to all the UK medical schools for all their teaching materials to do with MECFS, because they simply don't answer questions. And I'm not just talking about questions from me. They don't answer questions. A few years back, Dr. Nina Moorhead, who is a medical educator and has MECFS herself, she's an absolute expert. She's, if you want a proper qualified medical person, there's no one better than her. And she went through the medical council. She did everything as formally and properly as it could possibly be done. And she requested information from the medical schools, and most of them didn't give her any. So they don't want to tell you what they're doing. By talking to lots of different people, and a good way to find out what they're doing is to just talk to a student. If you can find a student in their last year at medical school, you can find out exactly that's the best way. Never ever give the student's name or identify them, because you could get them in trouble. The medical world is weird. Like, people get punished for speaking out. Doctors can't say, if something goes wrong at doctors can't speak out about where they work, about their employers. They just can't. But okay, there are lots of little subtle, informal ways to find out what medical schools are teaching about ME/CFS. And from what I can tell, there's something like 30 medical schools in the UK, and from what I can tell, 3 of them are doing a good job, actually giving their students an idea of what this illness is, preparing them to be good doctors to their future patients with ME/CFS. Most are pretty terrible. The ones that are really silent, that you don't hear anything from, my suspicion is that they are fully back in the Stone Age and teaching people that ME/CFS is a minor behavioral issue which can be solved with some CBT and graded exercise therapy. I think we have to be cynical and believe that about them until they prove otherwise. I have also gathered that there is this weird middle ground. There are some there are some medical schools that are teaching students that ME/CFS is a real serious illness. And this is weird, they're not teaching them what post-exertional malaise is, and they're not teaching them that exercise could be harmful. They're just sort of teaching them that it's a serious illness and kind of leaving it at that. And treating it as if it was basically chronic fatigue and chronic pain, which, I mean, that's certainly part of it, but to teach ME/CFS without talking about post-exertional malaise is just like, I don't know, it's like teaching someone colors but not mentioning the color red. It's and it's not preparing those future doctors to understand this illness or to give good care to their patients. The thing that really, really, really terrifies me is that these medical educators are not bad people. I've heard them speak. A few of them I've spoken to myself. They're good people. They think they're doing a good job. They need someone to tell them what the scientific literature says, but how do you do that? They're not going to go to PubMed and research it themselves. Okay, most of them won't. I have met one who did. I met one researcher who actually did the proper research, went to she must have spent hours. She read the research and she read the nice guidelines, and she really, really, really got things right. So it does happen. Some medical educators just do what you would want them to do, and they do it properly, and they arrive at the correct results. But my impression is most of them are not doing that work. And they're certainly not listening to someone like me. I mean, they're not even listening to experts. Like there's groups like Doctors with ME. There are groups a lot more professional and expert than me who are trying to work with medical schools and mostly being rebuffed and ignored. So to me, the way UK medical schools looks like they're fortresses ruled by kings, opaque, no accountability, new information cannot go in. There is no learning from science which has been developed in the past 10 or 15 years. It's just, it's freaking medieval, is how it seems to me. There's the Medical Schools Council, which meets once a year, and kind of, it's representatives from each medical school. They meet once a year. I have not yet figured, they could do a lot. They're powerful. They could tell every medical school in the UK to care about ME/CFS. And that would help the future. It would help people 10 years from now, but it would also help the present, because medical schools really are at the heart of the medical world. if the way people think and do things in medical schools is changing, well, those medical schools have, doctors, professors who are eminent and respected, and they're influential in other ways. So if you change medical schools, you're not just changing the medical school. It's not just for the future, it's also for the present. So I do feel that penetrating somehow the medical schools and getting them to face the reality, it would be incredibly powerful. The person who's really working on that as well as anyone could is Dr. Nina Moorhead. And I think she's very, very slowly chipping away from them. But the problem with Nina Moorhead is there's only one of her. I mean, if we could have a machine that clones not only the body but also the brain and all the experiences, and make like 30 Nina Moorheads and put one in every medical school, problem solved. But there's only one of her. So that's the medical schools and the Medical Schools Council. What else am I going to do? Oh my God. The Royal Colleges! Okay. Well, I said medical schools are like opaque. The medical Royal Colleges, wow. They are seen as being so powerful and so elite and unquestionable. They have unquestionable authority. No one may question them. They do what they want. They are not accountable. They are opaque. Everyone in the medical world seems to kowtow to them. Maybe they do some good things in other areas, but in MECFS, their function seems to be to hold back science, research, and clinical standards by 10 or 15 years. They're supposed to drive medicine forwards. They're supposed to be the ones. They're basically professional associations, but they're sort of ancient and very authoritative ones. The most important one is the Royal College of Physicians, who are on record as saying that they don't agree with the NICE guidelines because they think that graded exercise therapy is good. They did not bother to provide any evidence to support that statement. NICE did. NICE did an incredibly thorough review. It took them 4 years. They did it publicly. It's published online. It's hundreds of pages. But NICE literally went through every single study on MECFS that looked at treatments and very carefully and systematically evaluated these stories, and then sort of compiled and collated the results and put it online and made the whole thing public the whole time. That's how science should go. It should be careful, it should be precise, it should be methodical, it should invite criticism at every stage, and it should be public. The Royal College of Physicians, they just seem like they can say, nope, graded exercise therapy is good. And no, but that's it. They can just make a statement. They don't need to justify it. I don't know. Maybe they're wizards. Maybe they can wave their magic wand and that makes a thing true. I wish we could find some... The thing is, the Royal Colleges, the Royal Medical Colleges, I would like to just ignore them, but I think they do have a role in the UK medical system. They're supposed to be the ones who take the new knowledge out of the research and kind of drives it forward. I mean, why are the NICE guidelines not being implemented? Where's the gap? I think normally what would happen is when there's some new science and new scientific understanding, new clinical standards, I think it would be the natural role of organizations like the Royal College of Physicians, the Royal College of GPs, to stand up and hold up this science, publicize it, start creating training on it for the doctors, and just generally pushing it forward from just being something that's in the NICE guidelines and on PubMed into something that changes clinical practice. That's a role that they have, and oh man, are they ever shirking it. I mean, they are not. Why does the exist? How do they justify their existence? I mean, they're not only not helping people with ME/CFS, they're actively hurting us. It's wild. It's wild. They're promoting outdated therapies that have been proven to be very, very harmful and to cause permanent disability. And gosh, I don't even know what to say about. The one thing I could say about the RCP is it would be so fantastic if we could get ordinary doctors to rebel against them, because doctors, I don't quite understand the details of how this works, but doctors want to be in the RCP. They take an exam and then they become members of the RCP. And I would love it if we could find a way to communicate to ordinary doctors that the Royal College of Physicians is actively holding back proper treatment for ME/CFS, actively promoting an outdated scientific view, actively promoting treatments that are known to cause serious relapse, which can last for a long time and can become permanent. I wish we could find some way to hold the Royal College of Physicians to account and get what they're doing to be seen and understood by the wider medical community. But I have no idea how to do that. So that's medical institutions, really. And I talked about the Royal College of Physicians. Everything I said pretty much also applies to the Royal College of GPs and the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and probably a lot of other ones as well. The only medical institution that I kind of have a good feeling about from the research that I've done is the British Medical Association. They seem to be good people. They seem to be democratic and accountable. They seem decent and good and trustworthy. Can the ME patient community talk to them or interact with them or work with them? I have no idea if that's even possible. It might be not. I mean, the BMA is a trade union for doctors. I don't know if they even want to talk to patients. Maybe that's outside of what they do. But they're the only non-evil medical institution that I've found. Okay, NICE isn't evil. NICE is just limited in what they do and what they take responsibility for. But the NHS, the medical schools, and the medical royal colleges, they're not just neutral towards us, they're actively hurting us. Actively, very actively. And if we could somehow expose that in the medical world, that would be a powerful thing. But I don't know how to do it. So this video was really a whole lot of ideas that amounted to nothing because I don't know what to do about any of it. I hope it wasn't a waste of your time to watch this. I haven't decided yet if I'm actually going to post it. I'm just looking at the screen and seeing, my God, this is 33 minutes long. I'm going to have to listen to this and even see if I think it's worth you listening to. But if I have posted this and if you have listened to it, thank you so much for listening. I hope I can spark some interesting conversations. Just because I don't know the answer doesn't mean no one knows the answer. Maybe some other people out there in the community know the answer. If you do, I can't wait to hear it. Thanks so much for listening.